Simply Secured, Elevating Cyber Careers is a podcast dedicated to the telling of real stories of cybersecurity practitioners. They are on the ground solving problems, leading teams, and building secure systems. Hosted by James McQuiggan at 35,000 feet, each episode features a honest, engaging conversation with someone whose work in cybersecurity might not make headlines, but makes a real impact. Hello there, I'm James McQuiggan at 35,000 feet, and today I am thrilled to welcome Cristina Pawlica, who is a longtime member of the Simply Cyber community. She served in the Air Force for over 6 years as a force support officer before she left active duty to pursue cybersecurity. She's got a master's degree in transnational security and cybersecurity, and currently she's working as a solutions architect and volunteers in the cybersecurity field. So today she's going to bring us some leadership lessons regarding service, her non-traditional path into cybersecurity, and look at how K through 12 consulting goes with regards to the education institution. So please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, give us a like, and I hope you're sitting comfortably as we take off and have our chat with Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I am a nomad during the summer, live in Colorado Springs in the winter, and I'm from Las Vegas, which is home of the Stanley Cup champions and back-to-back champions in WNBA, the Aces. I am an avid, very ecstatic member of the Simply Cyber community, and I care about all things cyber and professionally work in the K through 12 space and coming up with solutions and how they show up in Google, as well as sneaking in cyber any chance they'll let me.
Ready for takeoff.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Christina. I'm thrilled that you said yes to come on and being on the show. Ironically, you were one of the first people that I met in the Simply Cyber community way back in 2022, I think is what it was. When I got to first meet Jerry in Vegas that was at Black Hat and DEF CON, and he did a meetup. And you were one of the first people that came over and introduced yourself, and we chatted away. And, you know, it's always a great time to see you at the different Simply Cyber events, but also the, other conferences that go on around. So excited to have you here. And as I always like to kick off, rather than ask for your history and how you got into cyber, I want to know, and I'm sure as everybody else is listening, what was your aha moment that made you realize that, yep, cybersecurity is where I want to be?
Yeah, I've always been what I call cyber curious. So when other people talked about tech, and back when I was growing up, it was IT. It wasn't cybersecurity necessarily. I was just always interested in their stories, what they were doing. In college, I had a classmate that went to Black Hat and was fascinated about that conference. And I always wanted to go someday, right? Like it was seemed pretty inaccessible to me at the time. But what really got me into cyber, because I just never thought of myself like, I'm not smart enough, or I don't have a computer background, or, all those excuses. But my aha moment was when I failed to get in as an applicant for my PhD for international relations at Denver University. And then because I showed interest in Denver University, I saw an advertisement or something about the cybersecurity program. And I was like, maybe this would be a good fit, because always loved studying like war strategy, military, the back and forth, etc. And the more I dug into it just as a pastime, the more I realized cyber is always going to be a part of that. And so my path just inched me closer and closer to that. And it's really the back and forth, the chess game between both sides that, you see in cyber all day long, every news story on the daily cyber brief.
Nice plug there for Jerry for the show. And this all started for you after you left the Air Force. Is that right?
Yep. I got out, ironically, to do something more related to like counterterrorism or war related, being closer to that topic. Because the military is like any other job, a desk job. You have 90% that's tedious. So you go to work and do your 9 to 5. And then you maybe have that 10% that's the cool stories, what you see on TV. So I got out to be closer to it. I was trying not to go back to school. Not that I don't love school. I just, it's pretty pricey, and ended up going into a program for high business tech sales at a tech company to get closer to how we use tech day in and day out on the private side. But then after a while, I wanted to do a PhD in international relations as well, which brought me back to cyber. So, yep, did that shortly after I got out. I took about a year off to do nothing, be they always say, like, I want to retire and be a bagger at a grocery store with no responsibilities. I was a hostess at Applebee's for a year and just taking my time and relaxing and recovering before I did something else.
So there's the fun trivia fact about Cristina Pawlica. She was a hostess at Applebee's. There we go. So your time in the Air Force, knowing that it wasn't anything related to cybersecurity or what you're doing now, have you found that the skills or any perspectives that you had from the Air Force are helping you in your cybersecurity career now?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially once you get into those leadership roles, I think it's all translatable because you're working with people, and cyber at its core is people, and tech too. There wouldn't be any problems if it wasn't for the people. There's a couple of things that I take away. One, just leadership, and I was a force support officer, and what that means in the Air Force is the Air Force has squadrons for basically every discipline. Like, they have a cyber squadron now, which is something new. It used to be the comm squadron. They have pilots, they have intel, etc. All of them has their very distinct disciplines. And then you have everything else, and that's force support. We support the force. So dining facilities, hotels, personnel, admin, mortuary, childcare, all of these things fall into it. So it's like the logistics of people. So as an officer, you bounce around to different disciplines. You could be doing services, you can be doing personnel, but at its core is learning your people, what motivates them, where they want to go, helping facilitate that, and how everyone fits into a team and builds a team. And that was the thing that I think I was most passionate about and was hard to leave, even though that's exhausting because it's like I'm not a parent, but I imagine it's like a parent, but for 300 people at once. And yeah, that's frightening. The other thing too is you learn how to work with your interdiscipline. So a lot of people overlook you as force support because you're the one, you're motivating the airmen to serve lunches to other people, and they often get overlooked, underappreciated. So you motivate them to do that. But how do you get other squadrons to recognize that you are important to their mission as well? And so a lot of times, I would say logistics and civil engineering is a big one. At the gym, the wing commanders would always have their things. They'd walk through different facilities and point out, why is this light out? Why is that light out? Etc. They always had their very specific pet peeves. We couldn't really fix that without civil engineering or the people that actually fix the facilities. So if somebody new came in, especially if they're like a captain to captain or lieutenant to lieutenant, sometimes you just preempt it. And Jerry talks about this all the time. And you leave a 6-pack on their desk and say, hey, I have nothing to ask you right now, but I know that we'll be working together and I'll have a lot of asks. If there is anything I can do, please let me know. And then just building relationships that way. And when it comes to exercises, we're very much involved, like air shows, emergency, like crisis management will be a part of that too. So very, very interdiscipline, very relationship based.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it is all about the human, even in the work that, that I deal with. But yeah, even on a day-to-day basis, whether it's cyber or any other career, we're always working with people, and a little pro bono or a little quid pro quo doesn't hurt from time to time. But also at the same time, you're doing it to build that relationship. And, whether it's a 6-pack of beer or it's a cup of coffee, but just to be able to have the opportunity to say, hey, look, you are somebody that I would like to hear more from or have a conversation with. Here's kind of a preemptive strike. Have a cup of coffee on me, kind of a thing. Yeah, no, I certainly agree. One of the things that I remember after we connected, I remember seeing were some of your videos that you had done on LinkedIn. I'm curious, what motivated you to start creating those videos on LinkedIn? And also your backdrop in there, is that real or is that fake?
Yeah. So it depends. Like I said, I'm a nomad in the summer, so I'm in all sorts of places at any given time. If it's the dark, moody library backdrop, that is fake. And that's what I take with me from place to place. If it's the more open couch in the background, TV, white fireplace, that is my living room. And it's very cozy. Love to be there in the wintertime with all my books and the fireplace and do the Christmas season. I worked in business development when I came into this company that I'm at now. So, like I said in the very beginning, I went through a veterans program to do high tech sales at tech companies. And I got brought on to this company shortly after that to do business development. And this is the role that makes phone calls, reaches out to people. We're a website company, at least we were at our core. We've expanded since then. So it would really just be trying to find schools that happen to be looking for a website. Nothing pushy. We have a really good sales culture. You're working with K through 12 schools, which makes good clients and makes us be a pretty good steward of that sales type of relationship and approach it in a more consultation approach. A part of that was making calls, was putting yourself out there, was maybe amplifying what marketing was doing. And our marketing department is great, but they've grown since I've been there. So it used to be pretty small. So initially in business development, my boss was very interested in video as a method of outreach. And our team was really small. So she gave me the leeway to experiment with LinkedIn videos. And at first, it was just very experimental. I would basically take a blog that marketing wrote and amplify it and take out the little pieces, show them different parts of the website in like a demo fashion, and then bring them into the company to just learn more or subscribe or something like that. Over time, since I've moved out and did more of a technical role, like Google, the search algorithms, etc., I did take a break in between to figure out what I wanted to do branding wise. And there was other people at the company that started taking on those videos. And also, it's funny because I would be at a bar or out and about with family, and they would tell me that they'd seen my videos. And I just thought it was funny because I was like, oh, those are for schools. They're not even for it. But a lot of people I knew would tell me they would see them. Now, what I like to focus on, and I'm not posting it as regularly. Usually it's about a month or two in between. I really want to get something that would be valuable to schools before I put it out there or timely. Now I focus more on Google analytics, mostly search analytics and or Google Analytics and security. So again, anytime that I can talk security for K through 12 schools, I try to put my foot in the door and let them see if they'll let me in and talk a little bit more about it. But that's what I try to interject in my videos as well. Because it's a very underserved space, although I would say that there's a lot more support from other entities and organizations that are helping in that area.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the SEO video that you did at Simply CyberCon last year. I sat down in prepping for our chat. I sat down and watched it because I'm the MC of track 2. So I
Yeah.
unfortunately didn't get to see your presentation. But I remember Jerry coming up to me afterward and going, oh my gosh, we had so-and-so couldn't make it. And Christina was like, yeah, I got something. I can get up and talk SEO. And boom, up you went. And there were the slides and it just blew them away. But being able to just get up and it's like, yep, I can deliver a presentation. What do you want? Here we go. And so definitely I have the link for that in the show notes for folks to go watch that. So looking now at the work that you're doing with the K through 12 schools, how would you describe what the current state of cybersecurity is with schools? Because we hear about ransomware attacks, we hear about attacks. What are you seeing in your experience, without naming names, but how are you seeing what the current state is?
Yeah, I think it's pretty on par with what we hear every morning listening to cyber news is that they're under resourced often and not all the time. Some of them do have robust IT/cyber and security staffing. But those are usually for very large districts. So while they have big offices, they also have a huge landscape to help service. So resource is always going to be an issue, but I've seen that there's been a lot more talk and help and attention to that space. Something about schools is they're not actually critical infrastructure, but they often get pulled into the conversation when it comes to protecting our critical infrastructure. So CISA has done an amazing job in the last couple of years of at least amplifying the need and providing resources. Whether or not that's going to solve problems, it at least is introducing that as we should be paying attention to this. And you're not alone, and you're not in a silo, and there's other people out there, and we're here to help you. The other one is the organization K-12-6 has done a phenomenal job and they've just had a steering committee come on with representatives from all sorts of districts to help amplify that too. They have a conference every year, and I'm always taking a look at how I can sneak in there. But I'm a vendor, so I like to respect that that space as well. As far as attacks go, I would say it's still third-party vendor, risk that is affecting them the most. So that is something that at my company, and really every company that's a vendor to anyone, but particularly K through 12 schools, is yes, they want to pay attention to cybersecurity, but at what point do schools and districts start saying, we're not going to go with you because of cybersecurity? So once it starts impacting sales, that's when companies are going to start investing in it. Now, certainly from the baseline when I first started to now, a lot of them have been SOC compliant, SOC 2 compliant, have been going over different infrastructure, making it clear what their security is, cleaning up, hopefully, at least at our company, cleaning up our legacy infrastructure. And we went through a ransomware event too. And, selfishly for me, that was a very exciting time. Horrible, horrible time for everyone else that was dealing with it. But I had just graduated from my master's, my cybersecurity master's at Denver University, like very, very fresh. And then one of the last classes was our forensics class. And so when I saw them going through it, I was like, this is textbook. This is pretty textbook. So I was very proud actually of how they approached it, because there was a lot of news stories before of like how they botched it, how they hid it, how they didn't pay attention or notify people appropriately. So I was very proud of our team for taking care of that. And it was the best possible scenario because someone right before they were about to leave for lunch noticed something. And it was it was a group that had been attacking a lot of people at that point. And I don't think I can say much more than that. But it was very lucky. Our CEO at the time chose to bring down everybody's sites before it got infected even more. So it was a choice. It wasn't a reaction. But it's still third-party vendors. And again, I'm listening and listening and listening until schools and districts say, we're not going to go this way because of security. That's when we can start making the case of more investment. But certainly we're putting a lot more effort than have in the past. That's a very long answer for K through 12, but I'm very passionate about it.
And that's certainly evident, and that's awesome. No, it's great information. So we hear that, yeah, resources are an issue. They can only do so much with so many people. For me, one of the things that when I look at education institutions, it's a target-rich environment. You've got teachers, students, faculty, staff, social security numbers, address information, a whole, stuff, information and data that social engineers, scammers, cyber criminals, that's a gold mine for them. And a lot of people, in those, early on in those institutions were of the mindset, it's like, oh yeah, what are they going to do? Steal all the lesson plans? I'm putting words in their mouth, but that was kind of the mentality. It was like, oh yeah, no, if we get, who's going to want to attack us?
Yeah.
And for me, I look at that and go, well, what about the long game? What about the fact that they hack, break into these schools, breach these schools, collect all this information, and now they sit on it and wait until these kids are 18? Because trying to do something now, you probably got a lot of parents that are locking down social security numbers for the kids, or you get the year of monitoring. Yippee. But you get that year of monitoring. But what about the long game? What about 10 years from now, when the kids are adults and they go after them then? That's my theory. But rather than look at the negative, what are you seeing that's working well in the K through 12 schools, in those different environments? What are they doing well that you're seeing?
They're talking about it. So if something does happen, they're talking about it, they're addressing it. These things used to be swept under the rug. A lot of again, this comes back to third party vendors, because a lot of those breaches where they're actually getting information is coming from a student information system. That's not something our company does, but that Power School breach that just happened, that's a lot of sensitive data. And then there's been previous breaches with other student information systems. They had data that was beyond 7 years old. So they weren't upkeeping the historical portion of it too. So I think talking about it by having organizations like K-12, I promise I don't even work there, and they don't even know who I am. With organizations like that, you go from a one-person shop to amplifying your ability by communicating what's working well at other schools across the country. So I know that's a squishy answer. It's a soft answer, but I think that's going to be the most effective. And for companies that aren't putting protocols in place, third-party vendors specifically, that aren't putting things in place to help with their risk, and therefore the risk they pass on to their clients, are getting punished for it. So there's accountability too. Now, yes, it might be a slap on the wrist, but it's still something. And if it was, I think we need to have a healthy balance of it being too stringent, where everyone's just afraid to speak up, and then not stringent enough where why even bother because nobody else is playing by the rules. And then I will say that another thing is, in absence of maybe the federal help, so CISA, they helped a lot by providing resources, sometimes grants as well, and partnerships, but mostly what they can do is documentation, checklists, guidance. States like Ohio, I think, are starting with their own mandates for schools to have a simple cybersecurity policy in place, certain very fundamental things. So now there are checklists and compliance, if you will, but it's more local because that's state. And sometimes the complaints that we hear is if it's federal across the board and it's too stringent, it doesn't make sense for everybody. But at least states, if they're creating it, it is a little bit more local, and made for their constituents. And again, if they stick to the fundamentals, like give frameworks instead of mandates and compliance and punishments, it'll be more likely to be useful.
Yeah, talking about it is certainly the first step. We want to certainly see that action be able to protect, the students, the faculty, and the staff. And with CISA CISA's been fantastic, and having those resources, hopefully it allows them to be able to go from talking to taking some action, to at least have some, security awareness training, something to make folks aware to, because that humans are the number one target with all of that. And God bless the teachers. You hit them up with a phishing email of, hey, free Chick-fil-A or Starbucks. It's an easy target. Kind of shifting from the day job of what you do work-wise. One of the things that I've seen with a lot of successful cybersecurity people that are very engaging, is they're volunteering. And they're volunteering to help out, whether it's in a cybersecurity organization or in, something that they've been involved with in the past. And one of the things I saw that you're active in and involved with is a nonprofit organization called the 2010 Foundation. So I'm curious to know, what is that, and how did you get involved with that? And then has that helped you with, how you approach cybersecurity?
Yeah, this is a really cool story, and it's not about me, it's about my class. So I went to the Air Force Academy and graduated in 2010. And when we graduated, somebody took lead on this, but we built a fund where each month we would give $20.10, or whatever you could afford. But that's pretty good for lieutenants that are graduating into the $20 is about what we can do. But over time, we went back for our 10-year reunion, and a little bit before that, somebody was looking into it, our class president, if you will, and saying, I don't know if this is being invested properly. We should take a look at it. And so we did, and it was being ran by a graduation association. But what it allowed us to do is really look at it intentionally of, okay, what are we going to do with this money? Where do we want it to go? And we're one of the youngest classes to be able to do this because over time, over 10 years, we've just been putting a little and little and a little. The endowment fund that was came together at the reunion, and we had an idea of maybe splitting that fund into a nonprofit and to an endowment. An endowment is more tied to the academy, has a lot more red tape, and has to play by the rules by the Association of Graduates, things like that. So there's only certain things that we can do. For example, one of the fundraising activities that we wanted to do was spirit videos. I don't know if you've heard of those, but anytime we play Navy or Army, there's always these spirit videos of how, we're going to beat them. They're usually funny and witty, or it's like stealing their saber or something like that. That was a no-go for the Association of Graduates, just because, cadets could be creative, and how creative they can get, they don't want to be liable for. But another thing that we wanted to do too is that fund went to, some money for the squadrons, the cadet squadrons that were number one for that semester, and like money to put back into their squadrons, make their hangouts a little bit nicer. But there's also a subset of like a lot of things that weren't being addressed or didn't have money going towards them. And those were more hardship type of situations. And so we did end up voting to split it off. And my what I volunteer for is the 2010 Foundation that can address any number of issues as we see fit and as alumni or cadets bring up to our attention. But it's one program that we've taken over to be able to fund is a Cadet for a Day program. And that is essentially like a Make-A-Wish. It is coordinated by Make-A-Wish Foundation. So any child with a terminal or serious illness could become a cadet for a day. And so they get a little flight suit, they march in the parades with us, they go to lunch, and the cadets are the ones that coordinate this. So that's another important part, is that leadership and that giving back that we're able to nurture. It's all cadet ran. We're just able to give the means and the funds because it always was dependent on donations and what funds the cadets would have in order to make that a special experience. So that's just one initiative. The other is, and this might be a very niche, is a initiative that helps any cadets that become mothers or fathers when they're at the academy, because that's not something, you're not allowed to have dependents when you're at the academy. So that becomes a huge hardship. You have to take a time of leave, and there's a lot of things that go into that. And as you can imagine, with an environment like the academy where there's a lot of competing focuses and pressures, that can take a toll on a cadet. So there's an organization of cadets that help guide those other cadets through it as much as they'd like them to. And then there's my role that I still need to build up, which is Hardships. So it could really be anything. At the academies, you have all sorts of people. You have people coming from very wealthy families. You have people who may have been homeless before they came into the academy, because it's a public school and it's a free scholarship, essentially. Sometimes cadets can't afford to go home over Christmas or Thanksgiving. Sometimes you have a death in the family and you're away from home. And so any type of hardship that can come up, someone can submit it. And I thank you so much for letting me go on and on about this, because I think it's a great way to give back. We can take a look at if we are able to fund a plane ticket home for a funeral, for a celebration, for the holidays, help them afford dining outs with their squadrons. It could be anything, and the board would just vote on whether it's worth giving back to that. Just one more cool story about that is we were talking to the Cadet for a Day group just a month or two ago and talking about how we wanted to support them a little bit better. And one of the lead cadets that was in charge of this program said, I was actually a cadet for the day. And that experience made me want to come here after he got over his illness. And what was magical about that is the CFO for 2010 Foundation was on the call, and he said, what year was that? And he actually was the officer in charge when that cadet was a child going through that program. So he had actually facilitated that day, and they had met and had an actual picture together. It just comes all back around when you give back. And that's my spiel for volunteering. But volunteering for anything, conferences, cyber-wise, did you know you can volunteer for the Olympics? I'm obsessed with the Olympics too. But some of the coolest things I did came from volunteering because you get to see a different side of things. And you get to meet different people that you wouldn't have otherwise access to, etc. So I'm a huge proponent. If you want to be selfish about volunteering, by all means be selfish. You get another look and another perspective, and you can do conferences as an attendee and then as a volunteer and see what you get out of both experiences.
Yeah, I can certainly attest to volunteering is extremely worthwhile from a selfish perspective. The inner feeling, the boost of the ego. And like you, I've got, stories upon stories of people being able to help people through volunteering, whether it's been in cybersecurity or it's been, with other groups or whatever else. And you guys do have your 2010 Foundation does have a donate page. So not expecting anybody to go out and donate, but just saying. You are a 501c3, so you're able to go donate for that. So if you know somebody that's got money that needs to donate somewhere for nonprofit, there you go. Very cool. Yeah, no, volunteering is great, especially even if you're doing it for conferences. It's great for networking. It's what I tell all my students, and constantly are always having those conversations with people. Go out and volunteer. It's a great way to give back. There are three things that we can give. We can give our time, we can give our talent, we can give our treasure. And being able to do all three, or being able to, do two or one of those through conferences, volunteering at Simply CyberCon or volunteering at a B-Sides event or whatever it may be. There's a lot of great opportunities that come from that can help benefit you, but then you're benefiting other people.
Absolutely.
Real quick, one of the things you mentioned here today is the fact that you love to travel, a digital nomad. And you've been traveling already this year, and we were chatting about that earlier. But I know for me, when traveling, it's great to be able to see other cultures and other, parts of the world. How do you find that exposure helps you with your thinking in cybersecurity?
Again, I just think it comes down to people. So the more you travel, the more you see things that are the same. And then the more you also see what about home life you like in the US. So I think it's really just cyber hygiene. That's something that's always on your mind. And I would say traveling too, because often I'm camping or on the road. I always have my security in mind. And a lot of the security, because I'm a solo female traveler most of the time, and usually I have my dog in the back, but they don't know he's a dachshund. So you just have to rely on that. A lot of it is just keeping a low profile, cyber wise as well. So I would think that cyber and physical security while you're traveling is both of the primary things that you should be thinking about. And I don't really wear a lot of logos. I usually try to be as nondescript as possible. And I think you should be doing that, with your cyber hygiene as well, making sure that you aren't leaving your computer unattended in a hostel, open and unattended, that you keep track of your devices, that you're not bringing too many expensive things that make you a target. So a lot of the cyber part, I think, really comes down to the physical security in not trying to amplify who you are or what you're doing, and just keeping to yourself. So pretty short answer, but I mean, it's the fundamentals, I think, when you're traveling.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you're traveling, it's almost you want to assimilate to the environment that you're in. You want to keep that low profile. One of the things I was traveling earlier this year in another country, and one of the things that somebody made the comment of is it's easy to spot the Americans. Now I know I'm picking on America, but it's easy to spot the Americans when you're over in Europe, because they're always wearing baseball hats.
Yeah.
A lot of Europeans don't, and I was just like, oh. So I stopped wearing my baseball hat for the rest of the week. I was like, I no point in standing out like,
Yeah.
and my wife and I jokingly, as we're walking down the street, I'm like, American, oh, Canadian, American. Yeah.
Yep.
The Canadian had a backpack with the big Canadian flag on it. You knew it was Canadian.
Yeah. That helps.
But exactly. I mean, whether a traveling or business trip or in life, trying to keep that low profile is crucial. And I think it's adorable that your dachshund in the back would be barking as loud as all get out, and hopefully enough that'd be like, okay, never mind.
Yeah. I've had somebody tell me, it's like, oh, he has a deep bark. And I was like,
Yes. Yes, he
Here's
does.
my alarm, my deterrent. They can't see in, so they don't know how small he actually is.
There you go. That works. Okay, so now we get to the part of the show, one of my favorite parts, and this is the rapid fire section. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just give me the first thing that comes to mind. Here we go. If cybersecurity is an animal, what would it be?
An okapi. That's my favorite animal. Have you heard of it?
I think so.
It's like a
Is that like a badger?
nocturnal animal that looks like a horse, a zebra, and a giraffe. And it likes the nighttime, so it's happy with night shift.
And is that why it's like cybersecurity? Is it because it likes the night shift?
That, and because cybersecurity is so many things in one animal. And that's what this is.
What's a word that you like in cybersecurity?
Lulls, as in for the lulls, because I think with one word is just a whole state of mind of a hacker. And so it's so much said in one word. But I also love cyber resilience as a go forward.
Very cool. So on the flip side, what's a word you don't like in cyber?
A rainbow table attack, because I have to look that up every single time to remember what that is. And I don't think it's intuitive. So it's not my favorite.
All right, that's cool. So, magic wand time. If you could fix one thing in cybersecurity and it goes away and it's never a problem again, what would it be?
If this was a magic wand, I would draw magic bubbles around the elderly, children, and the sick. So I think if we fixed phishing, it's just the back and forth, the chess game. Something else would come back and maybe it would be more severe. But if we could just, not mess with the elderly, children, and the sick, I think I'd be happy with how we go forward for the rest of cybersecurity.
I can certainly agree with that. What is a cyber tool that you like to use?
Google.
Google. All right. Google dorking is always fun too. Now, this is a great question for you. And this is probably the question you've been waiting all day for. Well, what's a personal or cybersecurity book that you've enjoyed reading? This actually could be hard for you because you have to pick one.
Yeah. This is like
I don't know if people realize, but you're the librarian, or that's your handle on Discord.
I love books. Always have. The library has always been my happy place. I'm going to throw out two.
Okay.
Because I'm going to cheat. And this is like when someone says, "Where's the best place you've traveled?" Like, it's not a fair question. But love Tracers in the Dark. Very well written. Anytime you get a journalist to write a cyber book, it's usually phenomenal. Because they know how to do research. They know the space and the vocabulary, but they know how to make it accessible, and they care about facts. So they're just great storytellers. But I think an overlooked book that no one really talks about, and it's pretty old at this point, is The Fifth Domain. I like that book because I think it's a great, it's great for fundamentals and people who don't really know. So this would be Jerry's Aunt Dorothea that he always brings up. It's very baseline and very easy to understand, but still very interesting if you've been in the space for a while. And it talks a lot about introducing cyber resilience instead of cybersecurity or just hardlining and securing everything. Yeah.
The Fifth Domain.
I'm so happy about this.
And Tracers in the Dark. And if I remember correctly, Tracers I got autographed for me.
Wow.
And The Fifth Domain I've gotten autographed.
That is very impressive. Not surprised, but very impressive.
What profession or job would you like to attempt?
Retirement. I think whatever job I take, whether it's here or in a cyber company, would probably be my last job, is what I hope. And it may be a few years, but I'd really like to be in a place where I've set up a couple of businesses, diversified my income a little bit, where I don't have to work, but I choose to take projects that, of course, help with my livelihood and things like that. And I want to build something cool and significant with maybe some friends. Maybe it's a cyber thing. Maybe it's a coffee shop with my family. So retirement while still working and taking on projects.
All right. I like that. So on the flip side, what profession or job would you not like to do?
Medical. I've never wanted to go into the medical space, but in medical, everything is an emergency to someone at any time. So there is no baseline. It's always an emergency, always surging.
What would you say has been the worst job you've ever had, or a job you didn't like?
The worst job, and I literally call it the worst job when I talk to some colleagues that are still best friends now. It was a small office that did senior leader management for the Air Force, and it was very tucked away because it was like sensitive with what we worked on. But that's not the reason I didn't like it. The reason I didn't like it is just it was a toxic leadership situation where they didn't treat the people right. And I am very easygoing, hardly get mad unless it comes to not treating people right, which is usually a leadership issue. And so I was just very angry the whole time I was there. But it comes down to culture more so than what you're doing day to day.
Now we get a little creative. So if there's a sandwich named after you, the librarian or the Cristina Pawlica, what would be in it? What are the ingredients?
I love an Italian, but I will say my go-to signature sandwich is a sub with turkey, provolone, lettuce, tomato, onions, and jalapenos. And then I'd want the bread to be like soft on the inside and crispy on the outside, kind of like a Jimmy John's situation. We can call it the Christina Club, even though it's not a club.
Cristina Club. Okay, now I like that. That works. If you could ask one person one question and they had to answer it truthfully, who and what would you ask?
So my dad passed away when I was a freshman in college, and I would ask him, what was your happiest moment during your life? Because when you grow up into an adult, and I'm sure you know this with adult children, is you don't really get to know them as a friends. You only got to know them as a parent. So that I think that's what I'd want to ask is what made you happiest in life?
Seeing as you're a traveler, what is on your bucket list as the one place you would love to fly to?
I would love to fly to Antarctica. That's the most expensive trip, maybe besides Machu Picchu. But if I were going to have a free flight somewhere, I'm going to Antarctica and cashing that in. But that is definitely on the bucket list. Almost everything that I can realistically come back from that I'm not going to end up staying involuntarily is on my bucket list.
Very cool. Antarctica. Yeah, you could like see the southern lights down there too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Okay, if you can only have 3 apps on your smartphone, which ones are they?
My messaging, so I would just say iMessage to communicate with family and friends most regularly. My camera, and I'm going to cheat and say like Safari or search engine, or we can get to all the other things through that.
What would you say is the biggest threat in the next 10 years?
I mean, the easiest one is people, but I'm going to say resources because I think we've realized that we can do a lot, but we've overpromised what we can actually realistically do resource wise. Like with AI, it has so much power, but you have to have the facilities, the money that goes into it, the staffing for all of those data centers that have to fuel that. So I think we're going to cut ourselves at the knees of what we can actually fulfill as far as our promises go.
Knowing that you've read a lot, what would you say is one cybersecurity myth you would like to dispel?
This might come from the movies, actually, but after I graduated, what I tell people is like hacking isn't really like you know what you're doing. Hacking is, did that work? Did that work? Did that work? And then over time, you have a toolkit maybe where things can work faster. But it's just hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss until you hit and win. So I think that's the myth that I would dispel.
As we get to the end of the episode, time is just flying on by. I'm curious to know, what do you want your legacy to be when it comes to cybersecurity, the Air Force, volunteering?
I think with anything, any step up I can take, whether it's in cyber or just life or business, I want my legacy to be that I turned around and helped somebody up behind me. So I never just did it and didn't look back, that other people were coming up behind too. I think that's what I want my legacy to be.
I always say I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, but at the same time, I'm reaching back and pulling somebody else up.
I didn't get here by myself.
Right.
I was given a foundation by plenty of people.
Well, Christina, it has been an absolute joy. It's been great to hear more about your adventures, and there were so many other fun topics to get into. We just didn't have the time, so we'll do a part 2 maybe someday. But our folks can ask you about your Airbnb. There we go. I'll drop that little nugget.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it at that. But yes, Christina, it has been an absolute joy. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this conversation. Looking forward to catching up with you at Wild West Hackin' Fest, at CyberCon, and maybe you never know, they might have you do another impromptu presentation if somebody doesn't.
Hey, they want to know about Google and let me talk. I'll talk for an hour. You know that's not.
There you go. No problem whatsoever. Well, folks, thanks for watching here today. Again, don't forget to subscribe, like the episode. It helps out Christina, and bring you these awesome episodes and interviews and chats that we do with everybody. So again, thanks for watching today, and thanks for stopping by.